The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
Today is October 21st, 2015, aka Future Day, or Back to the Future Day, or whatever the heck you want to call it. The future is now, the last day before the Back to the Future trilogy takes place entirely in the past. Call it what you want, but happy Future Day, everybody. Wait, Doc, you mean to tell me it's 8:25? I'm late for school! Oh wait, I've been out of school for years and years. I'm late for work! Oh wait, I had today scheduled off. Whatever, it's Future Day. Happy Future Day, everybody! The future. Well, the weather sure sucks anyways, and I thought we were closer to peak season with the fall foliage. So I anticipate that this video is going to have a lot of stuff in it. It's probably going to be rather on the random side, and it might go a little long too, maybe even have a clickable program guide. But hey, what can I say? It's Future Day. We're going to be having some fun with this, and not getting too structured because that would make the day a little bit less fun. However, before I begin watching the trilogy, 25th anniversary of course, a couple of things off the top of my head regarding today's celebrations. I am extremely disappointed in the 30th anniversary trilogy of the Back to the Future movies, the Blu-ray release for the 30th anniversary, because here's the 25th, it's got a slipcase, and it opens into plastic stuff for all the discs, right? Well, I saw some unboxings, I believe it was Adam the Woo on his vlog channel. Yeah, there we go, these multiple channels thing, but Adam the Woo on his vlog channel did an unboxing of both the regular and collector's edition of the 30th anniversary version of this, and there's cardboard slide-outs, like terrible DVD holders from 20 years ago. Is that supposed to test the anti-scratch coating on Blu-ray discs? And what about scratches label side? You know, anyone who had to deal with CDs knows that scratches label side are worse than scratches on the bottom. So, it's just insane. You know, what was wrong with this? What was wrong with this? You tell me, those of you who design a thing, why instead do we have to slide the discs in and out of cardboard like they're records gone wrong? Actually, no. Even records had little paper sleeves you drop the records in, and then you slid them past the cardboard to try and keep it from getting scratched. So, when even records have better packaging than a Blu-ray movie, you know something's not right. Either way, I have the 25th anniversary edition, and I don't intend on replacing it now that I know these things about the cardboard slide-out packaging. That's getting the 30th anniversary one starred on Amazon already. So, alright, time to watch some movies here. We'll chime in on various things between movies or what have you, but this could be a very long and very random video. Just telling you now. And if it winds up with a clickable program guide, be sure to come back and watch the rest of it whenever you feel like it, or watch it in chunks or what have you. I know a lot of people won't do that because they're like, oh no, every YouTube video needs to be 5 minutes! Yeah. With this kind of celebration, I could blow my nose in 5 minutes, never mind do anything actually interesting. Right. We got some movie watching to do. Blu-ray playback option of choice? The PlayStation 3, aka Old Reliable. I do have a PC Blu-ray setup, but the PS3 is actually more power efficient. So, yeah, I could hook my PC Blu-ray setup back up, but for the most part, PlayStation 3 does the job A-OK, and it gives me a reason to keep using that console, considering I haven't played very many games on it except for exclusives. 10:39 on October 21st, 2015. Holy crap, I forgot how long these movies were! Or should I say, great Scott, I forgot how long these movies are! I just got finished watching the first movie, and it's kind of interesting. You want to talk about time and coincidence and stuff like that, but the last scene where Marty wakes up in his changed current reality and has allegedly lost his entire life, so to speak, because of the change in the time flows and stuff like that. You know when you see the clock tick 10:28? When that happened, I looked over at my alarm clock way over there in the corner, and it says 10:20. It said 10:28 as well. So, nice little coincidence here on this Future Day. So this first part's probably going to be somewhat vloggy. I don't know what I'm going to do after it, but it's 10-something now. So I want to go to lunch/late lunch at the 50s diner that I haven't been to since the 80s. So I might put off watching part 3 until later on after my road trip. But I won't really mind that because part 3 is kind of, it's kind of like sequelitis for the Back to the Future series. It's an interesting story and it's fun to watch, but compared to the first two, my favorite is part 2. Obviously because of the references to 2015. So let's talk a bit about the first film as well as the video game, the infamous Back to the Future on NES. I had it when I was a kid, and I agree mostly with there was an old print review of the old Back to the Future video game on NES, LJN of course. So many reviewers have made fun of it. That called it Paperboy without the fun. I think that's probably the most accurate representation of the Back to the Future games and stuff like that. But I like the 2 and 3 game a lot better because there was more platformy elements. And of course you had Marty and the DeLorean sometime before the final stage of the game. And just, even though I didn't have a clue what I was doing in 2 and 3, running around, running and jumping between the 3 time periods, 1985, 1955, 2015, was actually pretty interesting. So I don't hate the game the same way that the AVGN and numerous gaming commentators hate the Back to the Future game, but I've only beaten it once. Every other time that I've played that I've gone to all the trouble to play through that game, I always missed on the last stage. So I said, forget it, Marty, looks like you're stuck here. So it's just, and of course the butchery of the Huey Lewis music in both of the LJN games, I'm starting to wonder if that was for copyright reasons, so it wouldn't resemble, if they didn't have the rights to the songs, it wouldn't resemble them too much, but have just a few hooks to sound kind of similar. So when the angry reviewers say that these LJN games butchered the Back to the Future music, you gotta consider, was that done on purpose? As far as the first movie is concerned, I knew about it growing up, but I never really saw it in large amounts until I saw a TV showing of it years later, and even then it was over a sitter's house, so I didn't get to see the end. And so for years I was bothered by, would Marty's parents recognize him? And now when I found out that it all was attributed to Biff later on, then yeah. So this is probably more of a part 2 thing as I'm getting ready to watch part 2 here, but there's some people that have been saying some things about, oh, what about predictions? What about reading into the lore? And what about, does the time travel make sense? It's entertainment, folks. It's a blockbuster movie. Hollywood always errs on the side of entertainment. If you dig into this too much, you're probably just going to give yourself a headache anyways. I'm seeing a lot of parallels between what people have been saying about these movies and even the video games and the metagaming stuff I was talking about earlier. If you base too much of these awesome movies on stuff you're hearing people say about them on the internet, it could spoil your enjoyment of them. Just enjoy the movies for what they are. I mean, I realize there's a few weird coincidences going on, like the Cubs being on their way to the World Series if they don't get eliminated tonight. That's a completely different discussion altogether. We'll probably talk about that after part 2. But understand, they weren't even trying. They just want to put in some futuristic motifs in part 2 and have a little fun with it because they didn't want to make super awesome predictions then turn out wrong 30 years later and nobody will have anything memorable to remember them for. And I'd say that this really, I'd say that Back to the Future's take on the future, putting it within the span of the viewers of the original movies' lifetimes, unless they were really, really, really up there in years, I think that really is where a lot of the appeal of these movies come from. Because, you know, I've seen sci-fi movies that take place in like the 25th century, the 27th century, way, way far into the future, but to only go 30 years? Well, we'll talk more about this future stuff after watching part 2. As far as part 1 goes, besides the whole DeLorean thing, I think the biggest concern about part 1, in terms of the march of time, is besides people not identifying with the 80s stuff in this movie, I think also the big thing with this movie is that people aren't going to get the DeLorean reference. When Marty says, you made a time machine out of a DeLorean? You actually have to look up the history of the actual real DeLorean outside of these movies. You know, I think that DeLoreans might not even be anything anybody even cares about anymore, but were it not for these movies. So, if they hadn't done as well as they did, DeLorean would have just been, haha, another, you know, alternative car company, not unlike AMC with the Gremlins and those other horrible 70s cars that couldn't compete with overseas competition in those days when car manufacturers overseas were like, hey, you know, gas might get expensive. Let's make some little 4-cylinders that are good on gas. And, but over here we had these big land yachts still, and then we had the gas shortage. And, yeah, oil embargo, gas shortage, that's something my dad could talk at great length about, although he did have a nice little way of getting through the oil crisis and with some of his work accommodations at the time. But we're not here to talk about how he was in the 70s. We're here to talk about this movie that came out in the 80s, or this trilogy that came out pretty... I actually think the last one came out in the 90s, but the last one is sequelitis, wacko, whatever. I mean, a Western out of Back to the Future. It works, per se. Ooh, stuff's creaking in the house, too. But anyways, alright, let's watch part 2. Depending on how long it takes to watch part 2 again, I will either blow off part 3 until after the road trip, or blow off the road trip until after part 3. Let's see what happens. Well, it's almost 1 o'clock, and I'm just wrapping up watching part 2. Probably just going to watch part 3 and then have the diner visit be a late lunch rather than lunch, although I am a little hungry right now. Should help with my appetite then when I'm heading up, actually towards the time I'd usually get out of work. I figured watching 3 full-length movies probably would do this, so I took that into account. So, yeah, but since the weather isn't looking all that great today, the hike probably wouldn't have fit in very well anyways, and it probably deserves its own video when the weather gets better. Or hey, what's stopping me from going back? What's stopping me from going back even after I move? But this isn't going to be in the vlog series, because it's going to be way too much about other stuff like Back to the Future Day and not as much about my current situation, which so far this has become an absolutely perfect day off in terms of kind of stopping everything that I'm putting up with. Phone hasn't rang or anything, although I'm probably jinxing myself by saying this. So let's talk about Back to the Future Part 2 now that I've finished watching it. Unfortunately, not without a few Blu-ray glitches. There's a few itty-bitty scratches on the edge of the disc. And that is probably the reason why Blu-ray is probably going to be the final disc format. I could probably just fingerprint smudge these to where it's kind of smooth again, but sad because part 2, well, maybe I should get the 30th anniversary thing now, but part 2 is actually my favorite of the 3 because it actually has the future in it. Now, I did get to see a little bit of the 80s when I was a little kid, but the decade in these movies that I am most familiar with is, of course, the one we're in right now. So technically I'm a future kid that grew up. But this kind of really reinforces one of the big issues I have with Blu-ray and why I haven't been too big of a Blu-ray collector. It really is the final disc format, because having to put up with scratches and stuff like that, I imagine as broadband technology develops, eventually the bitrate gap between this and digital downloads will probably eventually start to close, or it will get to the point where you can just have a humongous download and you just have a huge file that you store on something, maybe even something bigger than a Blu-ray disc, and not have to worry about optical disc scratches anymore, which makes it hilarious how in the future parts of this, of Back to the Future Part 2, they have optical discs going every which way. However, there is one thing that none of the futuristic sites that are trying to predict stuff based off of these movies is talking about. You'll notice a lot of the discs in the 2015 part of Back to the Future Part 2 are actually, they look like laser discs. And that's kind of something that maybe the movies got right and we got wrong in our timeline, because this size optical disc, it's just, when a little tiny fingerprint smudge can make your movie skip, or in this case, a teeny tiny scratch at the edge, despite the scratch resistant coating, when that can cause your movie to skip, or even, oh look, a scuff mark because I did this with the bottom of the disc. You know, just a little bit, whatever messes with the coating on this, you know, the fact that that can screw up your movie just means that we're hitting the limits of what we can do with these size discs. Maybe we should consider going back to something the size of a laser disc. Part 2, of course, is my favorite, but it feels like 3 different movies, because you leave the 2015 part, you go back to the alternate 1985 part, and then eventually the movie ends in 1955. If you haven't seen these movies by now, sorry for spoiling them, but you know, you're kind of behind the 8 ball. This trilogy's been out for 30 years now. It's celebrating its 30-year anniversary, so, but anyways, I won't go into too much detail other than that, except that Part 2 layers on top of Part 1 in ways that expand Part 1, and just, it really, the sequelitis in the Back to the Future series doesn't start until they take liberties with the material in Part 3, but at least they wrap everything up and they didn't just start having tons and tons of sequels after that. But So I suppose this is the time to talk about first the Part 2 and 3 video game, which I used to like a lot more, because it had more of Mario mechanics and stuff like that. So I almost never got anywhere in that game. I'd return maybe one artifact to where it belonged in its proper time frame. But the running and jumping, playing as Marty, seeing the DeLorean, that was essentially my Back to the Future answer to Super Mario Brothers back in the day. So I actually liked Part 2 and 3. And even though it was an LJN game and it had its issues, and the AVGN kind of made fun of that, and other folks had made fun of the sequel too, it was still better than the original game by leaps and bounds. So, as far as the 2015 stuff goes, it's kind of funny because they were just joking with some of the future stuff in here. But like I said with the end of Part 1, one of the things that probably makes these movies so popular is that the future, as portrayed in these movies, is actually within our grasp. It's not like hundreds of years from now or far, far off in a galaxy far, far away or something like that in some sci-fi flick or something like that. So being able to be somewhat reasonable with future predictions and stuff like that. Well, this is a pretty interesting historical piece as of tomorrow, but it's in terms of what people in the 80s thought that our lives now would be like. But it's just funny to watch all this stuff. So, as far as some of the technologies in it, as far as technology in the 2015 and whatnot, there are some goof-ups like newspapers and fax machines being everywhere, the old AT&T logo, AT&T still being dominant like they were in their monopolist days back in the 80s. But there's some technologies that I'm glad we don't have. As much as people are complaining about hoverboards and Pepsi Perfect and stuff like that, one of the things that I'm really glad we don't have is flying cars. You figure people are idiots with cars that move in two dimensions. Imagine if people could go up and down, too. I mean, imagine if we did fly everywhere. And imagine the issues with airspace. What if someone's car stalls out over your house and it destroys your house? I mean, what about... It's just flying cars. It's one of those generic futuristic motifs that people have been talking about for years. But I don't expect it to be anything more than a play toy for rich people, because you can just do something about infrastructure on the ground. It's just too much of a jump. I mean, it's too much of a jump to add that Z-axis, so to speak. So, I could imagine it, but I don't think it would be that great. I think we'd probably be regretting it if we had flying cars. Another thing, too, the whole Mr. Fusion thing. A consumer-grade garbage power generator thing. Generating power from garbage is done via incineration nowadays, and like I believe I said before, it's the dirtiest form of renewable out there. It almost feels like it's not even renewable energy compared to solar and wind. I think the bigger technology would have to be solar and wind. So there's actually a YouTube channel called Green Power Science, where one of the things that they did was they cooked an entire Thanksgiving dinner with solar power. So completely off the grid, complete solar cooking, an entire Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, these kinds of brainy type things with, hey, let's see what we can do with sunlight. I mean, that's probably way more futuristic than how 2015 was portrayed in these movies. So, and as far as the Chicago Cubs are concerned, it'd be kind of sad, actually, for the city of Chicago. They're facing elimination versus the New York Mets tonight. So this video will be done by the time that game's being played. So yeah, Cubs win World Series, sweep Miami. There is a Miami team now, the Miami Marlins, but they're in the National League, so they can't play against them in the World Series, unfortunately. The Cubs have been getting better and better, and they have Theo Epstein as their manager, so they're down 3-0 versus the New York Mets right now. Yes, the Mets, not the Yankees. I know of some folks who some of the New Yorkers that I went out to visit last spring, they're actually big Mets fans. Like, oh, you don't like the Yankees, do you? Mets, Mets, Mets. And now here are the Mets, in the NLCS, battling the Chicago Cubs, and the Cubs are facing elimination tonight. It would be pretty sad, though, if in this Back to the Future-ish year, it would be pretty sad if if it went from Cubs win World Series, sweep Miami, to Cubs miss World Series, swept by the Mets. But I think getting the Cubs being swept by the Mets on the way to the World Series is probably even less of something that could have been predicted 30 years ago. So I think, Zemeckis and Gale win either way. It'd be hilarious if the Cubs did their 100-to-1 shot, and because they have Theo Epstein and some serious drive to win ball games, that they could come back from being down 3, just like the 2004 Red Sox did, that Theo Epstein was also involved with. You know, all the parallels, because the Red Sox came back against a New York team, the Yankees, to go on to the World Series and win it. The Chicago Cubs are down 3-0 versus the New York Mets. And so, it'd be funny if it'd be even fun. It's actually, this ups the ante. If the Cubs come all the way back to win the World Series, it's going to be even crazier for these folks if it lines up with the movie than it would have been otherwise. So the ante has been upped. We'll have to see what happens, but let me just say, Zemeckis and Gale right now, they were trying to think of the most unlikely situation possible for a futuristic movie. So the Chicago Cubs haven't won the World Series since before World War I. So it's, there's a joke going around. Last time the Chicago Cubs won the World Series, there was still an Ottoman Empire. So it's just really, it's just crazy that, that things could come really close. And what if they won next year, 2016? Then maybe it would still be somewhat of a joke, but yeah, anyways. There are all kinds of videos out there going around today that are talking about what Back to the Future Part 2 got correct about 2015 and things like that, but at the end of the day, Hollywood movies are entertainment, and they will always err on the side of entertainment. And that's exactly what the folks that made these movies were going for. They admit it in the director's commentaries. They just put a bunch of jokes in about the future, and some of them just happen to turn out to be correct, because they guessed somewhat correctly on some of them. But it's the people that are like, oh, all this stuff has to happen because it happened in Back to the Future Part 2 back in the 80s. No, that'd be hilarious if it happened, but it's not mandatory. I mean, we have a lot of technology today that, you know, big panel TVs aside, we have a lot of technology today that this movie didn't even talk about that's still good. I mean, are we going to start saying bad things about this technology just because it didn't, the movie didn't talk about it? No, of course not. So, and I think all this hype is going to die down very, very quickly after today. So it's, it'd be funny if some stuff turned out to be true here, and if the Cubs won the World Series, considering that they're facing elimination tonight if they don't beat the Mets, and start a winning streak going all the way through to the World Series. It'd be sad for the city of Chicago, but I mean, movies are entertainment. That's ultimately what the deal is with these things. They're made to entertain. It's not supposed to be forward-looking, forward-thinking, any kind of prediction. And speaking of entertainment, if I want to have that late lunch that I was talking about at that 50s diner I haven't been to since the 80s, I do believe I have to get around to watching Part 3. So let's do that, shall we? 2:52 p.m. Almost quitting time if I had not scheduled the day off and gone to work instead. So, I really didn't gain anything. I figured I probably should just watch Part 2, but I just wouldn't have felt like I was really making good use of my time by watching Part 2 only. So I just had to watch a whole trilogy, but I knew these are full-length movies. I'd probably lose like almost as much time watching these movies as I did going to work. So I'm kind of in the same position. So it looks like the chores and whatever stuff that I was talking about yesterday is not going to happen, and I'm probably going to have something resembling an early supper at the diner instead. So I'm going to have to call it with this, because I'm sure that they wouldn't want me filming in the restaurant. Either the management or the other folks eating there wouldn't want me bringing a camera at that place, or to that place. So I don't know if they even, I'll see if they take credit card or something, but I'll definitely bring some quarters for the jukebox at the very least. All the tables have jukeboxes. Again, it's a 50s diner that I haven't been to since the 80s, so alright, so watch Part 3. I've watched Part 3, and yeah, it is kind of taking liberties with the source material, doing something for the fans, wrapping everything up. And 2 is still my favorite part because of the whole future thing. It's kind of what I most closely identify with. I certainly don't identify with the Old West, although I have seen some Westerns, and, well, as far as Clint Eastwood movies go, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly counts, I suppose. I also have Hang 'em High, but I never got around to watching it. It was on a 2-disc Clint Eastwood movie type thing, something or another. But when I first watched The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, I was up till 2 in the morning. So, well, it looks like this kills the video then. By the time I get out of the restaurant, it's probably going to be close to wanting to come home anyways, not wanting to put up with traffic on the highway and everything. So, really, this is pretty much a day at work with Back to the Future instead of work. so much for that idea. There was other stuff that I wanted to do, but it's not going to happen. There's only so many hours in a day unless you have a tricked out DeLorean that, you know, it's as far as part 3 goes, you know, some of the jokes like haha Clint Eastwood and things like that is kind of silly, and you know, they say that part 2's reference of the future was silly. Well, I mean, mixing this up with a Western was even more silly. So it's just, I didn't have any Blu-ray problems with part 3, because, well, of course part 2 has the most wear and tear. It's my favorite, so I've probably watched it the most. So I probably spun it on the plug-in Blu-ray drive that I used to hook up to my laptop the most. But, yeah, I can't see myself getting a 30th anniversary edition of this because of the cardboard slide-outs. You figure, this thing with proper casing, you know, this thing with proper drop-it-in casing, you know, has scratches on disc 2. I can only imagine what sliding against cardboard does. Even records have better packaging than that, though I believe I've already mentioned that. See, this is the problem with recording a special video like this constantly throughout the day, is that you forget what you said earlier and things like that. Although it was pretty funny, because the BD Live downloading a preview from the internet in high def was for Jurassic World, which I just saw yesterday. So it's... I suppose to wrap this up, now that the day's been pretty much consumed by the movies themselves, and I might be able to do 1 or 2 things if I hurry up of the errands I want to do, but those won't be anywhere near as interesting as me talking about the whole Back to the Future thing. How is this not a vlog? I mean, most of the videos consisted of me sitting in front of the camera talking. Nothing too exciting, I dare say. And I'm not going to go out and give the Connecticut State Police what they're undoubtedly looking for. There's no doubt they're looking to write up some nerds with some fat speeding tickets who try to go 88 miles an hour on the highway. I will not be doing that. Sorry, Connecticut State Police. But what keeps this from being a vlog is that it's not very personal. It's kind of talking about Back to the Future, talking about the technology, talking about the movies. It's way more topical and way less, well, vloggy, so to speak. Best day off in a very long time. And I still prefer the 25th anniversary trilogy over the 30th anniversary trilogy. And yeah, it was definitely worth it. Most certainly worth getting called a nerd at work and leaving the Great Scott picture on my desk, or folks be like, where's Jay today? So, alright. This has definitely been something else, you know, something else entirely. And I think it's time to call this for what it is and just call it and go out and get some food, darn it. Well now, that was pretty forgettable. Not exactly a memorable restaurant experience, just the latest way in which the plans I had for today turned out to be shattered by reality. It's almost like, you know, there's a difference between what we thought this day in 2015 would be like and what actually happened. Hint, hint. Yeah, well... Either way, I kind of, in the back of my mind, I was like, wait, this might take 6 hours to watch these movies. I might not hardly get to do what I want to do, but nah, what are you going to do? So the restaurant experience was completely forgettable. Fortunately, I was able to pick up some groceries nearby and then head home to not be a complete waste of a trip and a waste of gas and the whole 9 yards. No, I didn't try doing 88 up the highway. I didn't feel like making the Connecticut State Police's day today, so I didn't. But anyways, yeah, so did fire up some driving games like Burnout Paradise, but then I remember they don't have speedometers, so I'll have to reinstall Test Drive Unlimited 2 or something. But do we really want to tack on some gaming footage on top of all this commentary and have an even longer video? Yeah, didn't think so. So anyways, it was a rather forgettable experience. This was a 50s diner, a historic 50s diner that I hadn't been to since the 80s, and I went back in 2015. Last time I was there, I was a little kid, could barely see over the top of the table, and I, basically, just like any other place you go back to from your childhood, years and years later as an adult, the place seemed a heck of a lot smaller. So, it's just, you know, because when you're little and you can barely see over the tops of the tables, and you go back as a full-grown adult, it's a totally different experience, plus mature experience, that kind of deal, that sort of stuff. So, unfortunately, this restaurant isn't very interesting outside of, oh, cool, it's a 50s dining car. You know, it's a 50s diner. Whoop-de-doo, they kept the historical look, but unfortunately that doesn't really translate into a good restaurant experience. I think I honestly could have done better at Subway. Certainly would have spent less at Subway and had a more nutritious meal that way, but, so, basically I walked in and the place was dead. Nobody there. Matter of fact, I pulled right up to the front and said, I don't think they have handicap spots, so I just pulled right up front and center, went right in, sat right down. The food was almost too fast. It made me wonder if they had like a microwave going in the kitchen or something, or maybe the kitchen team was just that bored that they jumped all over anybody actually ordering food at this place. So the food was, well, average. It's the kind of thing I could make in my kitchen, but nothing too exciting. Certainly not on par with restaurants like the 99 or even Subway or McDonald's for that matter. But the biggest issue is not the food. The biggest issue was they're trying too hard to be historical with this place. For example, they have jukeboxes at all the tables. But what if everybody's at the bar? Nobody has a jukebox. So they're not going to be popping quarters in, and when nobody's putting quarters in the jukeboxes, nothing's playing. So the restaurant is dead quiet. So it's dreary almost. It's like you're sitting in someone's camper waiting to be served food because it's a 50s dining car. It's supposed to be a 50s diner, but it just doesn't work. I mean, it's too quiet. If I were in charge of the place, I'd break the historicity a bit. I'd put like music at 1/4 to half volume, and then it cranks up when someone fires up the jukebox. Basically, that's it. But I walk in and there's a bunch of older folks sitting around the bar ordering sodas every so often, and it's not really. I'm wondering if they were there just to make the place not be empty, so it wouldn't be that dreary to be the only one in the restaurant. But then again, it was really early for supper for me, like 4 o'clock. Who eats supper at 4 o'clock? But yeah, so I went out there, and yeah, the service was fast. Maybe the kitchen team was bored out of their mind, and they jumped all over my order, but the problems began when I opened up the menu. Now, this is a 50s diner. 50s was like the golden age of fast food. My dad grew up with those kinds of places, and places that, make McDonald's look, mass-produced. So there are all these independent 50s, 60s diners out there that he used to go to, and you'd think this would be like that, with some kind of burger and fries specialty. It was nowhere to be found in the menu. You could get a hamburger, but I couldn't find any fries anywhere. I mean, 50s style diner and no 50s style fast food? Well, God, throw in burgers, fries, and a milkshake, for crying out loud. When do they think McDonald's first got their start as McDonald's as hamburgers or whatnot, with that goofy-looking Ronald McDonald wannabe on the terrible original McDonald's commercials? But it's just terrible. I mean, you go to all the trouble to make a 50s diner, but no fast food. Instead, behold, the menu has steaks and meatloaf and seafood on Fridays and things like that. I figured, you know what, since the menu was all messed up, the atmosphere was a disaster, and it was dead quiet because nobody was putting any quarters in the jukeboxes, there could actually be music playing in this place, I decided to just cheese it even more and order meatloaf. So I wound up with meatloaf, a scoop of mashed potatoes with gravy, some corn, and a salad served in a bowl way too small. And I say that because if you press down on the lettuce with your fork, the whole bowl could tip forward and throw lettuce leaves at you. You'd catapult lettuce leaves towards you. So I'm glad I didn't go very heavy on the dressing. I probably would have gotten splattered with some dressing if I did that. So very forgettable experience. The food, and even price-wise, I mean, you're talking double digits, like $11 for a dinner plate versus going to Subway and getting a foot-long for like $6, $7. It's just not even close. So, I mean, the wait staff was friendly, and I left a generous tip because, I mean, the place was dead. They probably, and they were certainly quick about it. Almost too quick. I wonder if they had a microwave in that kitchen and they were just heating stuff up. But I don't know. Maybe it's the kind of place Gordon Ramsay would kind of say stuff about. But overall, the restaurant experience was kind of bleh, so nothing too exciting. It certainly was a lot better when I went there as a kid. But I think we went there, first of all those years ago, there was a lot less restaurant competition. That place is no longer in a prime location when it comes to the traffic and how much traffic you have to fight to get to the place. So there's places that are a lot easier to get to than that place is. So they have a terrible location nowadays. Plus, they also have a lot more competition to begin with, including the 99, Subway, McDonald's, can't remember any other restaurants nearby off the top of my head, but just the 99 alone, 99 has some good deals for under $10, and the food quality would definitely be higher. Probably one of the only ways to go to that, one of the only reasons to go to that, I think there's an Irish sports bar near there too, but there's, I think one of the only reasons to go to this place would be because it's 50s diner. That's it, the looks. You know, is that really what they're going for these days when you walk inside and it's dead silent except for a couple of people gossiping without even ordering anything over at the bar and making you wonder if they're just there to make the place not empty? So it's, I don't know what to say. It's just nothing like what I remember as a kid when I was like, oh, they have Twist and Shout on the jukebox, let's play it, because I just seen the Ferris Bueller movie when I was that little. However, I looked at the jukebox and you'd think, yeah, Beatles, Rolling Stones, Fleetwood Mac, and then you turn a little further, Lady Antebellum. I'm like, yeah, catering to younger folks in a 50s diner where they don't want to break the historicity to have some music playing all the time. And I don't care if it's oldies or something. I mean, the whole time I was there, I had just gotten done watching the Back to the Future movie, so the Chordettes' Mr. Sandman song was stuck in my head. Google it if you haven't heard it before. It's a cutesy little 50s song, but it was stuck in my head, so fortunately there was that. But, you know, stuff in your head doesn't count as a good atmosphere for a restaurant. What if somebody wasn't observing Back to the Future Day and wearing the nerd watch and stuff like that? And, oh yeah, October 21st, 2015. And then, of course, I'd say, Pepsi, what do you want to drink? Pepsi will be good. Got the regular Pepsi, like I thought I would. Maybe the caffeine will make it hard for me to fall asleep tonight. But, yeah, it was watery as all heck, though. Definitely the worst Pepsi I've ever had, even from a soda fountain. So, yeah, it's just one of those deals where you can't go back, so to speak. And I went to that place as a kid, and it was a lot more enjoyable experience all those decades ago. But now, yeah, they really need to cool it with, oh, look, we're a 50s diner, that's good enough. No, it isn't. Well, maybe the place will end up under new management that'll spruce that place up and make it into a proper nostalgia joint. But it was a 50s diner that I hadn't been to since the 80s, and today is October 21st, 2015. It was a match made in wherever. Don't know if it's a match made in heaven because it wasn't that great of an experience. I know if I took my, like a girlfriend or something like that on a date there, it wouldn't have been all that memorable. She probably would have never spoke to me ever again because it was so boring. Nobody was playing any music. Nobody was playing the jukebox, so it was complete silence except for a bunch of old folks gossiping about politics around the bar. So, or the bar stools, I should say. Lou's Cafe, it wasn't. But hey, it was October 21st, 2015, and I was bound and determined to make something of it, and darn it, I did. At the very least, with some good movies, if nothing else. So, I'm sure there'll be plenty more videos about what people are doing here on Back to the Future Day, Future Day, whatever, talking about the technology. I've already seen the Toyota video and the reunion between Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd, and now we just got to say, go Cubs. See if they can be like the 2004 Red Sox and come back from a 3-0 deficit in the NLCS to win the World Series. So that's really it. Otherwise, Zemeckis and Gale can, well, rest easy or be like, whew, that would have been silly if we were right about the Cubs in the World Series. So, alright, time for me to shut up. Because I'm sure there's other people with other videos about this day that you folks just can't wait to watch. Yeah, well, it's not like people can't click away anyways, but yay, cool! The wallpaper, one last time of the time circuits from the DeLorean, also on screen number 2. And as far as what happens next, who knows? So this has been October 21st, 2015, Future Day, Back to the Future Day. And I've gone too long without a drink. So, alright, well, let's just go pour something and knock it back and just enjoy the rest of the evening. Enjoy the rest of your evening too, folks, although you're probably not going to see this till the following day, so whatever. Hope you had a good Back to the Future Day, Future Day. As for me, maybe I should have taken tomorrow off too, so I could see how the Cubs do. But no, I wanted this video to be exclusively about October 21st, and that it shall be. And I will start the upload before going to sleep tonight. Like with other videos, I just leave uploading all night. Right. This is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by. And as Doc Brown once said, the future is what you make of it. So make it a good one.